So what is going on with the Los Angeles Valiant? Well, we, not so long ago, got the changes to the regions, East and West they are called now, and with London moving back to the American region, we kind of had an imbalance in the regions, with Philadelphia filling the London spot. It was still an odd number, and it made it difficult in APAC last year. There is 8 teams, and it was filled by the Los Angeles Valiant, which was a very bizarre move that no one really understood, and it really didn't make any sense. When you look at the Valiant in the power rankings, you would actually think, well, they'll be okay in the American region, but in APAC they would get pummeled. You'd expect them to be bottom of the standings. So what was going on? Well, then all of a sudden we get a tweet from Halo of Thoughts, and he said that the Los Angeles Valiant had been sold by Immortals Gaming Club, and that a brand new Chinese organization had bought the team out. And it made sense to me, because it made sense of this whole transition to APAC. But it has much more far-reaching consequences, quite obviously. So, the Valiant, however, did come out and put this down on their own Twitter. But the aftermath has caused quite a few Valiant players and ex-players to put up some questionable tweets and stuff like that, and it's led us to the idea that, well, it possibly means that Halo of Thoughts was right, and the Valiant maybe are trying to cover their tracks in the short term. And if that is the case, then that is going to blow back on the Valiant big time. It is not going to be good for them. So, the Valiant, the tweet reads, according to multiple sources, Immortals Gaming Club have sold the Los Angeles Valiant to a currently unknown to me Chinese organization. Also, according to the sources, the new Valiant owner does want a team with a heavy Chinese influence. This means that the off-season is definitely not over, because this would indicate that there would be a new Valiant roster coming, and the old roster would be offloaded. Now, that backs up some of the moves that the Valiant have made. We thought it was pretty odd them bringing in people like Adam and Agilities, getting rid of McGravy and people like that. It seems like downgrading. McGravy did have a tweet after this saying there's a lot of stuff he's typed out on Twitter and then sort of stopped himself from posting, where he could have said a lot. So there's clearly something going on. There's clearly something going on in the backgrounds of the Valiant, and we just don't know yet. Halo of Thoughts also did confirm that this means that most likely the whole Valiant roster will go alongside coaches as well. Valiant will move to Asia, and then bring in a roster with new Chinese talent. Now, it's two bad things across there, because if this is true, which all of the stuff supports it right now, including some of the weird tweets from Apply and McGravy, people like ex-Valiant players recently. If it is true, Valiant have lied on their Twitter, which is that's just no. It's just no. You're already going to hurt your fans in doing this, and you're going to cut off basically the rest of your fans. It's just no. You can't do that, and it's just transparency in the Overwatch League. It's a beautiful thing, and it doesn't happen at many teams. People are comparing it to the Vancouver situation last year. I think this is worse, because this is not a falling out between owners and the team. It's straight up Immortals ditching Overwatch. That's what it is. And it's like, I've seen some people say you wouldn't do this if you care about your fans. No, because let's be honest, Overwatch in the Western region not doing too well, but in China and Asia, the figures are booming in terms of viewing figures, especially for the Overwatch League. So there's going to be a lot of Chinese interest. Now, this would lead to some people wanting to buy out teams, or some people wanting to create new teams. It's interesting that the Overwatch League haven't moved down the creating new teams route. I'm sure they could have got at least 2 new Chinese teams, although they may want to keep it more balanced and not take it away from North America. But then again, when you look at a Valiant owned by Chinese people, a Chinese owner, and having Chinese talent and stuff like that, it's basically a Chinese team. It might as well be a Beijing-based team. And so it really doesn't make any sense from the Overwatch League from that point of view. However, the stuff from Halo of Thoughts really does start to make sense when you look at the weird roster changes, the lack of money spent by Immortals, and then culminating in the move to APAC. It screams sense. It really, really does. And it's just a very, very, very messy situation, isn't it? Let's be honest. And it's a shame. Valiant has always been a really nice team, in my opinion. And its rosters have always been really good. You got McGravy, who was just a really, really nice person. He's kind of been dumped on here, and the whole roster's been dumped on if this goes through. It really, really has. And there's some really good talent on the roster. Like, Dreamer is a perfectly great main tank. And look at KSP, he had a fantastic year last year, so did Shax. And they deserve teams. And if they get dropped this late, they find it very, very, very hard to find a new team to join. Because already, like, look, we've been saying recently that teams have already made their moves. They've locked their rosters in. Say Rain leaves. I could see him ending up at the Boston Uprising, for example. But there aren't many teams with slots left to buy these players out. And so they get left to compete in contenders or end up retiring. And it's really rough. But we can look at this the other way. When we look at Valiant acquiring a new roster of new Chinese talent, then where does that new Chinese talent come from? Because when you look at the likes of the Chengdu Hunters and the Hangzhou Spark and the Guangzhou Charge to an extent, they've made them roster moves and they've snapped up a lot of the new talent coming out of Team CC or coming out of Bilibili Gaming or Flag Gaming, etc. There's a lot of Chinese talent that has already been snapped up. So is this going to be... the way to describe it is this going to be like a London Spitfire, but for China? That are just completely new and unknown, and maybe they do well, maybe they do atrociously. I'd be willing to go for the latter. Setting up a roster this late is never a good sign. Never a good sign. Because look at all the rosters in the league, especially Dallas. Dallas handled this so well this off-season. They get so much time to prep. They get to take part in tournaments and do loads of scrims, get to know the players, make sure everyone's on the same wavelength, and they are ultimately more prepared than they could ever be for the next season of the Overwatch League. When you look at teams that have made moves rather recently, like London, a lot of the London roster is already synergized through British Hurricane. So that's another thing you can take into account there. But when you look at the Valiant, it most likely will be a lot of a new roster. Unless the other route they can go down is they buy out an old Chinese team in contenders and promote all of them to the Valiant. That is another option, but that requires money that clearly this Chinese investor does have. Otherwise he wouldn't be buying an Overwatch League team. That's cost him millions and millions and millions and millions and millions. So he's clearly got a lot of money, or they've got a lot of money, and it will be interesting to see what route they take it down. And I don't know what the league rules are regarding this, but does this mean that eventually we might see a considerable rebrand for the Valiant? Could they somehow take the Los Angeles slot and take it away from Los Angeles and put it in Beijing? And call them the Beijing something, I don't know a name off the top of my head. But could they do that? I don't know whether that's I'm not sure whether you can in league rules, because officially what they would have done is they've bought the Los Angeles slot, or the second Los Angeles slot, just like Cloud9 bought the London slot. That's kind of how it works. Like originally Optic bought the Houston slot. So I'm not exactly certain on how the Overwatch League works with this, but if that is allowed, and you're allowed to completely hike a team out of its region and out of its city and take it to another city and use that city, then I think that stinks, to be pretty honest. And I doubt whether the league would allow that. However, they may not be called the Valiant anymore. They may end up being called Los Angeles and something else. We remain to see. There could be colour changes. There could be all sorts. You never know. And this is all stuff that we will see in the future if this does indeed happen. Again, none of this is confirmed as of yet. But with the rumours spread by Halo of Thoughts, and then the interesting tweets from some of the Valiant team management, Valiant players and ex-Valiant players recently, it would indicate that something quite major is going on at the Los Angeles Valiant, and therefore we could expect a very, very different LA Valiant in 2021, even than what we have right now, which is going to be very, very interesting. We will keep up to date with this as much as possible and as soon as possible throughout the rest of this off-season, and we will be continuing to keep an eye on the transfers and everything else. There is a Discord, obviously, to go to if you want to get in touch with me very, very closely. I am always on that Discord, along with Illusion and everything else, which is all linked in the description below. But I will be leaving it here for this one, so thank you guys so much for this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then!